It says we are live. So, welcome, Sarah. Welcome back.
Hi.
Sarah's come back to do her second part of her presentation. And Mike, welcome. Great to have you here. And great that you're past your procedure and you're doing well. It's really some good news. You needed some now, so that's great. Um,
Getting better.
Glad to, I mean, I got an eye out, not glad, but glad to have an eye out for Susie Q and Punchy Paints Pam. So I'll try to watch for them. Pam's having bad weather where she's at. Sometimes she can't get on with the Wi-Fi. And we don't know if Susie knows the day of the week or not. Last week she didn't. So we'll see. But anyway, Sarah, welcome back. I'm so excited to
Hi.
have you back.
How?
Sarah's links are going to be posted up there, and they're in the description. So be sure and check her out. And I'll just mention that it's on Reptales' Facebook page, but she did about a week or a week and a half ago, she did her monthly stream and answered questions. And you want to talk about a wealth of knowledge. If you want to learn
Thank you.
about corn snakes and snakes in general, that is an awesome. I told her I've looked at it twice and gone back for, hey, Larry, welcome. Um, Anyway, it's a great video. So, Sarah, tonight, what are you going to talk to us about?
Well, I am open to any questions, but you and I mentioned when we were emailing, possibly talk about ailments that snakes can get and how to cure them, or at least how to keep an eye out for things, just the general health and wellness and maintenance of them. I know last time we kind of just went over the very basics, but we can kind of dig into whatever. We could even dig into a little genetics if you wanted to.
Cool, cool. I was just talking to Sarah about what she might have for sale, and she tipped me off to a snake that she just had come available. So, you know where I'll be as soon as we start the stream. So, genetically, I really would want that snake, I think. So,
She's a great one. I was gonna keep her, but can't keep them all.
now I shouldn't have said that. Watch somebody go over there and that or not. So, who's that with you? That's the same girl you had last time.
Yep, this is Cleo. I did have, and I still have, Bjorn. We mentioned, I think, last stream, Bjorn. You asked me which snake had come back to me after I had sold her, and I got her out, but then she decided she needed poop, and so I put her back in and thought, well, for the moment, I'm gonna hold Cleo instead. But I actually have like 10 snakes out.
Oh,
If anybody wants different morphs and things, if we
yeah.
were going to do some genetic stuff, I thought I'd kind of show you back and forth. Sorry, girl. Back and forth, kind of what the genetics do and how they work a little bit by just showing you the different morphs. If we want to get into that.
Okay, I'm sitting here clenching my fish. I'm like, yay, it's a dream show for me. Yeah,
Okay.
awesome. Well,
So wherever you'd like to start.
I'll blow you up, and Mike and I are here. And if someone comes in, I think it'll take you down, so you'll know for sure when someone comes in. But if
Okay.
that's all right, I'll put you there center stage. Um, Yay! Hey, good to see you and have you back.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Awesome. And we've got some of our snake keepers coming in, so and reptile keepers. So that's awesome. Welcome, guys. Welcome, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. And thank you, Lucky Stone. I appreciate that. She said I'm a great guest. I appreciate that. I try.
Yep.
Whoop. Cleo
So,
is being an interesting guest today. She's like, I'm done.
bless her. I have been handling my corn snakes more since last time you were on. I think 2 weeks ago, and
Yeah.
they're fine with it. They even come up to the edge of the tank and look out at me when I'm feeding them because I try to draw them to different areas of the tank to feed them to
Hmm.
avoid any rebel rousing. And they, hey Bruiser, that's Jenny Lynn's significant other there. So they come up and look out, but they don't come out. They never try to come out of the tank. They know where their bread's buttered. I guess it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess.
Uh, so maybe talk about some of like the common ailments or how to prevent some of the
Yeah,
common
sure.
things.
She is getting very mobile. So let me
She's
put her back and grab someone else here. She's just kind of she says I'm done sitting still and then we'll start with mites since we were talking about that earlier.
oh yeah, Guys, I've got mites just barely started in one of my tanks, so I've got to get on that too right after I order a snake right after this.
Right after that, huh?
It's not after that. Yeah. It's my G-stripe ball python, that little sweet snake, the cinnamon G-stripe.
There we go. This is Bjorn. We got her all cleaned up. You can see she is a bit different looking from Cleo. She has more contrast and just kind of more reds, less oranges.
Yeah.
And she's a little younger, a little bit smaller, but she is breeding size. So if we are going to talk about ailments, the first thing is mites, because like I said, we were talking about that earlier. And mites, they aren't the end of the world, but as anyone who's ever had mites knows, it's really difficult to get rid of them once you get them. And they're really easy to spread. So in my mind, like mites are sort of the bed bugs of the reptile world, like super easy to spread, really hard to get rid of. But definitely possible if you get it like early enough, like catch it early enough. They're pretty much like little tiny ticks, and some snakes can get ticks too, by the way. Mostly pythons, you're not normally going to see like a corn snake with ticks, but I have seen ball pythons with ticks, so just sort of be aware of that, especially anybody who's getting ball pythons straight out of Africa. A lot of times those wilds will have ticks on them. But anyway, back to mites. There's a few different signs of mites, and the first, like most common one, is if your corn snake is spending a lot of time in the water bowl, because the mites are like really itchy on them, as you can imagine. Like just kind of imagine your entire body being covered with bugs, and the worse they are, the more likely it is your snake is going to sit in the water bowl for that. So if you're noticing that your snake is in the water bowl, it's very possible that they have more mites than you think they do, and they're normally black. So they're going to be harder to see on darker snakes or snakes that have a lot of dark colors on them. They like to be up by the face. So like, see if I can get her. Come here, girl. She's not having it. But yeah, so you can see like anywhere in those little folds around her mouth and around her eyes, those are going to be the most common places. And you can see she already has natural black spots there. So it makes it harder, of course, to find the mites. But if you do find them, they're going to be little tiny crawlers, and they actually hatch out white, and they're almost invisible for like the first, I don't know how long they live, but for the first phase of their life, they're almost invisible. And then once they are adults and they're black and they're big enough that you can kind of see them sticking out the side, that means that they have probably like bred. It probably means they're big enough to have reproduced. And so that means you probably have mite eggs or even more baby mites that have hatched. So first sign of this is if the snake's in the water bowl a lot, they're trying to drown the mites. And of course, they don't consciously know that that's what they're trying to do, but that's sort of the ultimate. That's what ends up happening. But you almost can't ever get them all, because the snake obviously has to breathe, stick their nose out of the water. The mites are just going to be on the snake's nose instead. But you will often see a lot of little black dots in the water bowl. So I always like to use light colored water bowls, especially ceramic. I always use ceramic because it doesn't keep bacteria. Sort of like toilet bowls don't really keep bacteria because ceramic. So same concept. And I also like them to be white so that if there are mites, I can see them floating in the water. You can see little black dots in the water. And if they're big enough, you can tell that they're bugs. If they're too small, though, you may not, with the naked eye, really be able to tell. And if the snake sheds, the mites will come off with the shed, but they'll immediately just go straight back to the snake. So it's very hard to get rid of them. But there's a lot of different mite sprays out there. There's Preventamite is one that a lot of people like to use. I really liked a brand called Mite Off. Well, that's not the brand, but that was the type that I used, and I can't find it anywhere anymore. But it had like garlic in it and some other more natural things. It was less chemically, and I thought that it worked pretty well. But then again, I didn't have to use it that often, thankfully. Yeah, I guess, do you have any questions specifically about mites?
I was going to ask, I think you answered it though. I was going to ask about when they sit in the water like that. Um, does it drown the mites? And I guess it's if they stay in there long enough. I don't know if the mites are capable of getting oxygen from the blood they're feeding on or not. I would think not. Ticks
I
can't.
don't think so. But I also think they don't need much oxygen either. So
Yeah.
they don't they're kind of like ticks. I mean, they are in the same family as ticks.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine being covered in ticks, some of them are going to drown, some of them aren't.
Mm.
And of course, the snake isn't going to want to sit in its water bowl forever. It's going to probably want to move around. And so those are going to be spread all over the enclosure, which is why when you have mites, or if you find out that your snake has mites, and I would say even when you get a snake, no matter how healthy you think it is, do quarantine where there's no bedding, or at least when I say no bedding, I mean no like wood bedding or chips or anything like that. Use just paper towels, or maybe like some other sort of white paper, like printer paper, as bedding temporarily. That way you can see what's going on, especially if you have like white paper towels, and just spray everything with the mite spray. And some mite sprays you do not spray directly on the snake. Some you do. Always follow the directions. But just follow the directions as it says on there. If you notice that there's mites, if you don't notice that there's mites, but you're just getting okay, what is the snake I'm holding? She's an Okatee. She's an Okatee corn snake, and her name is Bjorn. She's a little mobile. She is gravid very early on in being pregnant, but we can talk about that later if we want to. So yeah, just follow the directions to get rid of mites, and good luck. It's really tough on babies if they get mites. I would say anytime that I've had babies get mites, there's probably like a 10% chance that they're not going to make it through the mite treatment. They're just not established enough for it sometimes, especially if the mites themselves were really bad and literally sucked a lot of the life out of them. There's a lot of babies are not going to make it through mites. So just if you get a new snake, do a very like diluted version of the mite treatment when you're quarantining them, if you're concerned about that.
Okay. Awesome. I had a question that branched off of that, and I was watching the snake, and it went right out of my head. It'll pop back in when it's inappropriate later. I'll tell you.
Okay. But obviously, there's other things that can go wrong. I don't want this whole podcast to be here's all the problems with snakes, because they are a lot easier to keep than most animals. You could have a laundry list of the things that could go wrong with any animal. Just my cat, for example, he has had hyperthyroidism. He's had diabetes. He has hip dysplasia. Like he has, and some of those are uncommon things. So any animal is going to have a potential of having something, and we're just kind of going to go over some of the more common things, I guess. Mites being the most common thing, and that's usually not the owner's fault. Sometimes, well, I say that. If you're a new owner and you only have 1 or 2 or 3 snakes, and you see mites on one of them, usually not the owner's fault. Now, if you're an owner that's really established and then you find out that there's mites like all over your collection, it's possibly because you haven't been paying enough attention. And so I would watch out for people. If you're looking for a breeder, always read reviews on that breeder. And if there's a lot of reviews that say my snake had mites, it's probably because that person is really they're not paying enough individual attention to the animals, just in general, whether it's mites or whether it's anything else. And it also probably means that they're not washing their hands too much between handling. Like obviously here, I put one of my snakes away and picked up the next one. And with this little group here, I'll probably do that. But I'm going to make sure that they are all healthy in between everything. You know what I mean? But if you're a big breeder and you're never cleaning your hands in between anything, and you know that you have mice or something in your collection, I mean, that's a problem. And so just if you're looking to buy a snake, always read reviews, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I did think of that, what I was going to mention to you or ask your opinion about. And
Sure.
that's, one of my local stores that sells snakes and other reptiles and fish. I was in way too many times lately to get crickets and things. But about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I noticed something in there, and I asked about it, and it turns out that on the advice they say, and it's one of the big snake things online, so I won't say who, but he said, and I couldn't find any evidence that that was true. It said that they use like the things that kill bugs and things and cut them into smaller pieces, and they're adhesive, and they stick them inside, like
Oh,
up above the snakes, and
is it like a fly?
kind of like that, but it's not the strip. It's something for bugs, and it kills all the bugs and stuff. It's a poison. But I was kind of like, what if it licked that or flicked its tongue on it or
Yeah, I would not put any, don't put any poisons of any kind in your enclosures. And that accounts for anything. Like sometimes, it depends on also where you get your bedding. So you want to be careful that whatever bedding you get, especially if you go to like the garden section of somewhere to get your bedding, make sure that they don't put any kind of chemicals in whatever you're buying as well, because that can be a problem. But yeah, I wouldn't go out of your way to use any chemicals unless absolutely necessary. Like obviously, if you do have mites, you're gonna want to use mite stuff, which does have some chemicals in it, but that has been proven to help the snake more than hurt it. And anything like that, I don't think would be helping the snake more than it would be hurting. I do see a couple questions in the chat that I'm going to answer real quick. What problems do mites cause? So, for one, they literally suck the blood out of the snake. They will slowly, pretty much make your snake die of having no blood. If especially because they, if left unchecked, can get really bad. And I've seen cases where someone brought in a baby snake to me. It was a black baby snake, and they're like, "Well, we think that there's mites. We've seen a few crawling around." Its eye sockets were completely packed with mites, like
mm,
just absolutely packed. The mouth area was completely packed with mites. That snake did not make it. There was no way that that baby snake was going to make it. So just your snake becomes anemic because it can't produce blood fast enough. They can also spread diseases. So if one snake might have let's say you do have snakes together, or you have multiple snakes even in the same room, because mites can occasionally crawl up through holes, or like I said, if you don't know you have mites, you handle one snake, then you go handle the next one. If one snake has anything, a respiratory infection or anything like that, mites can spread those diseases as well through your collection. So you don't want, you don't want that. The other question that I saw up there was, what does the snake eat? She will eat large mice or medium-sized quail or fuzzy rats, and occasionally she'll eat reptilinks. She's one that will eat just about anything I throw at her. But some snakes are not that. Some snakes are more picky than that. I think that was the last question.
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm missing questions in the chat. I am trying to keep track of it. I have two screens. I always feed my snakes frozen thawed. If I have a snake in my collection that only eats live, it gets sold to someone who can provide that more readily than me. I don't want to deal with live rodents, so I always keep my snakes unfrozen thawed whenever possible.
I'm lagging about 10 seconds behind you because I'm like, now I didn't see that question, and then it popped up about the
Oh,
answer.
sorry.
No, that's great. You're seeing them if I'm missing.
I feel like I'm lagging because I can see myself do things,
You're
and
ahead
it's
of me.
a few seconds behind. Anyway, so I hope that answers everyone's questions about mites. There are other problems, of course. So respiratory infections, usually upper respiratory infections are more common. The snake might like wheeze or have like a whistle to their breathing. They might sneeze. Um, and like if it's just like one sneeze, probably okay. Could have just been the bedding or something. If the whistle goes away after the snake sheds, it was just because the dead skin was in their nose. Um, Wheezing though, like and crackling, like if I were to put her chest up to my ear and when she was breathing, I heard like a sound, that's never a good thing. That usually means a respiratory infection is starting. And if you don't address it, obviously it's just going to get worse. Usually, sometimes they'll get over it, but if you notice it, get your snake to the vet. They will give you some antibiotics that will help. Sometimes it's just like a one-time injectable. Sometimes it'll be an oral that you have to like put through like a pipette. Um, and sometimes it depends on what it is. They might actually send you home with actual syringes where you have to give the injection every day or every couple days. I had one snake. She was a red tail boa that no matter what we did, we could not get rid of her respiratory infection. The vet tried, we tried everything. We tried everything. And eventually she just passed away from it anyway. And so get to it as soon as you can. And try to avoid it. So if you have multiple snakes and you notice one has it, keep that snake away from the rest of them, because you never know, like one snake may just be able to deal with it better than another snake. Like I've never had another snake die of a respiratory issue. But she got it and she did not make it through it. So it is one of those things that you definitely want to head off at the pass if possible. One of the more late stage symptoms is drooling. So if you ever see your snake like drooling or opening their mouth to breathe and keeping their mouth open to breathe, those are usually signs that it has gotten pretty bad. So just kind of keep all that in mind. If you have, I would say pretty much any animal is keeping, but that's with snakes, respiratory infection is going to be one of the more common issues that you can have. Come on, girl. So does anyone have any questions about respiratory infections?
Just trying to envision giving a reptile an injection. Susie Q, that's not here, had one of her lizards she had to do, but had mouth rot or something like that.
Yeah, so I have done it before. And what you do is you have to go back. So like her scales naturally go in that direction. So you have to inject up like against the scales, up underneath one of the scales. And it's best to do it like on their side or like kind of on the side of their back, because they have some muscle like on either side of the spine. And so you can kind of get it right there. It's never fun. It just is what it is. It's just a part of it. But yeah, you mentioned mouth rot. So mouth rot's another thing. Mouth rot and scale rot are both fungal issues that usually happen when the snake is in too humid of an environment, especially for too long. And it usually starts because of a break in the skin somehow. So with mouth rot, it's usually if after they eat, maybe they break a tooth off or something, or who knows what. That is like a place for that fungus to get into their skin. And it's the same thing with like scale rot. If maybe the snake rubbed up against a rock too hard and there's just a little tiny break in the skin. And actually sometimes it's on their belly. Like if it's too moist in there, sometimes it just it's sort of like any other fungus can do anything it wants, really. So if it's just too wet, it just leaves an area for that fungus to get up under the belly scales, and that rots their scales essentially, and it rots their skin. If it's in their mouth, it can cause their teeth to fall out. It can cause the skin in their mouth to die. So that's something else to avoid. If you ever notice that, get your snake in the driest environment that you can possibly give it. And it's the opposite for respiratory infections, by the way. If your snake has a respiratory infection, it is best that there's more moisture and not less moisture, because you want them to be able to get that virus and like whatever is in there out. And if it's too dry, it's kind of like if we have respiratory infections. If it's too dry, like our sinuses can't drain and our lungs are like uncomfortable because you can't move anything out. So respiratory infection, add more humidity. Fungal infection, less humidity. And these are uncommon for the most part. Like I said, respiratory infections and mites are probably going to be the two most common things, but they're still not super common. Like it's not like this is going to happen to everything. It just happens sometimes. I'm trying to think. There's one thing that can happen that is incurable, and that is crypto. I don't know if anybody has heard of crypto. Probably some people in here have. But it is a parasite that cannot be killed. Essentially, it is incurable. If the snake gets it, usually dies within 2 years. It comes in usually from the mouth. Oh, hey, thank you. I see Silver Creek Exotics or Aquatics, my bad. I'm so used to the word exotics in my line of work. But yeah, thank you. Hi. So it usually enters through the mouth. Um, and it can enter, like, if you have another snake that has it that poops in the enclosure that your snake has, like this can happen during breeding. So if you put a male in with a female and the male has it, and he poops in her enclosure, let's say he poops in her water bowl and then she goes up and tries to drink water, that it can happen that way. It's super, super easy. Hi, Sam. I see you. Hi. Um, and so what this parasite does basically is it causes lesions in the lining of the stomach, and that can cause the stomach to swell. It causes the snake to not want to eat, um, and it ultimately will kill the snake. Like, there's nothing that you can do about that. It might kill the snake really soon, or it might take a while. It might take years. Question: so that fungal pathogen, I don't know. I can't read that, but which is the same as hole in the head that fish get? It might be. I don't know fish well enough to say for sure. But
I don't know that pathogen for snakes, but
Ophiomides,
if
Ophidicola.
I had to guess and it was on a test, yes or no, I would say no because one lives in air and one lives in water.
I don't know for sure. I do know that fish can get fungal infections, but I don't know if it's the same bacteria. It might be, or the same fungus. It might be. I don't know.
Great question.
Cannot answer. I'm not super good at knowing the species name of things that I'm talking about. Like crypto, I know is short for some other longer word that I don't know what that word is. I could probably Google it. Crypto something Siporium or something.
Pam's joining us. Welcome, Pam.
Oh, hello,
Hello.
Pam.
I came in just in time to hear about deadly diseases, so.
Yeah, well, yep. There's really only one that's like incurable, and that's what I was mentioning.
Is that the same female that you showed us last week?
No, I did have her out, but this is Bjorn. She's an
Okay.
Okatee.
I
See if
love
I can
the
get her
markings on
closer.
the belly of the natural ones. I mean, it's just so pretty.
Yeah, there's hers. Hers are a little bit more contrast, like a little bit more black versus white.
Yeah,
Crypto's
it's
Feridium,
really
honestly.
quite bright. She's really beautiful. She's really
Thank you.
beautiful.
Yeah, she's one that I sold a few years ago, and then the owner this year was like, "Hey, so I'm downsizing. Do you want her back?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll take her back."
Beautiful.
So she's here.
Oh, she's really pretty. Really pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, the thick banding is what is Okatee. That's what we call Okatee, is these thicker borders. She's not an ideal Okatee. She is technically one, but she's not like the best looking. Of as far as Okatees go, I think she's beautiful, which is why I still have her for breeding projects.
Yeah, she
But
is beautiful.
if someone was looking for like a really high end Okatee, she's not she's not the best Okatee. She's just a beautiful snake. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other ailments. Oh, so today I learned that snakes can get ringworm. That was a new one for me. Someone messaged me and they said, "Hey, so we foster kittens. Turns out these kittens have ringworm. Can this hurt our snake?" And I was like, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm gonna find out. And so I did some research, and sure enough, snakes can get ringworm.
Wow.
And I don't know what my camera's out of focus. I don't know what the treatment is for that. I would say go to the vet. That's what I would say. But apparently, the symptoms are very similar to respiratory infection symptoms. So, if there are some mild respiratory infection symptoms that are persisting even after treatment, maybe check for ringworm. that was a new one for me. I haven't done 100% research on it, but apparently that's a thing.
Oh, wow. Huh.
It's new to me too. I've never heard of a reptile having ringworm, but I don't
Yeah.
know reptiles that well. So.
Yeah, even I was surprised though. I've never heard of it. I imagine it's really, really rare since so few people have heard of it happening.
Oh, okay. JMF researched that, I guess, and found an answer.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice. Thank you for letting us know that, because I did not know. I did not know the answer. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other common ailments. There just aren't. I think that we're pretty much at the end of the main stuff. We talked about the rot. We talked about mites. There's also other parasites. Snakes can get worms and nematodes. Don't know if anybody knows what a nematode is, but they're kind of like worms. And they're really hard to get rid of as well. I purchased 2 wild caught snakes back in 2014, and they both had nematodes, and it was a nightmare to get rid of them. Worse, like more difficult than any type of deworming of anything I've ever had to do. So kind of keep an eye out for that. You will see them, like you might even see them poop them out, like worms that are actually moving. So just be aware of that, especially if you're buying from someone like even a pet store, because you never really know where pet stores got their animals, especially if you're dealing with anything that's been wild caught, or has had contact with anything that's wild caught. Just be aware that snakes can get worms. I used to, so deworming one's collection is a thing that I heard a long time ago that you could do. I have it, but that's mostly if you feed like live rodents. So like normally if you freeze the rodents or feed frozen thawed rodents, you're not going to have too many issues with worms. But if somehow it comes in with the live rodents, you might want to deworm your snakes once in a while, but maybe only if you see signs of a worm issue, like the snake is eating but still getting thinner, or anything else like that you can imagine that worms might do. And I think that's pretty much it for the ailments, unless someone else can like think of something else.
No, that's awesome. And that was about half of an hour. So
Long enough.
I'm saying it was only half an hour. So plan your
Okay.
time to look at snakes.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to try to explain everything that could happen to a dog or a cat, it'd be a much longer list.
Yeah.
So.
And we're not restricted to an hour. We just generally, for courtesy, try to stick around an hour.
Yeah.
So if we go over
Whatever
a
works.
few minutes looking at snakes, it'll be fine.
I do have about 8 more snakes over here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 more snakes.
Oh, well, bring them out here.
Okay.
I want to see them.
Okay, I will do that. So, pick a
I mean,
color.
that's like teasing us, saying that they're there and you aren't showing us.
Pick a color.
Oh,
Just any color.
blue.
Okay.
What?
It's not going to be exactly blue, but it's the closest that I can get to blue.
Oh,
And that's grayish, blackish, bluish-ish. This is Splinter. She's one of my big females. She is in the early stages of being gravid right now. She's just bred last weekend. So she's not really showing yet. But come here, girl. Let's see. Can't really get my camera to focus on her. Maybe? There?
There you
There
go.
we go. So she is what we call anerythristic. If you remember Casanova from last time, he had the motley pattern, but it's the same morph. So that gray, black. And she just has the regular pattern instead of the motley pattern. She still has the belly checkers. She's just missing all of her reds and the majority of the yellows. There's obviously some yellow on her neck, but this is anerythristic type A. And there's two different types of anerythristic, A and B. I don't think I have an anerythristic B out here right now, but they're just a little bit like darker, not darker, but they have less contrast. So you can see she has the like kind of really light background with the really dark saddles.
Yeah.
An anery type B would have more of like a lighter or like a darker gray in the background, but a lighter gray in the saddles. So just less contrast, basically. And their eye color would be different. So you can see she has, maybe if you could see, she does have blue eyes. I don't know if I can get my camera to focus on her eyes. Maybe. There we go. So she does have blue eyes. They're like a blue gray. So when you said blue, I was like, well, that's the closest thing I got. I got a snake with blue eyes. And she's full grown. I don't think she's going to get any bigger. She's almost the size of Cleo. Cleo is just naturally, I think, going to be a little bit bigger than her, but this is kind of their natural largest size-ish for most corn snakes. So if anybody's wanting sort of a moderately sized snake that's not super small, but that gets kind of big enough that they're, you know, really easy to handle, corn snakes are great. I kind of like them. They only have 70 of them.
Yeah. That's her belly is the checkerboard, but is it a different checkerboard than usual?
It just has no red. That's the
okay.
difference. So anerythristic, erythrin is the name of the red pigment. So there's melanin. A lot of people know what melanin is. That's what's in our skin that makes our skin lighter or darker. Well, darker. And they also have melanin, which is this black here. But they also have three other pigments. But the common ones are obviously melanin, and then erythrin, which is red, and then xanthan, which is yellow. And aneries are missing pretty much all of the xanthan. This yellow here is actually a separate yellow. It's called carotenoid yellow. It comes in from their food. If they get extra keratin, or at least like how they absorb the keratin. So anery type A is called that mostly because it's missing the reds. Anerythristic, so A means lacking. Anery, erythrin is the red pigment, so no red pigment is what that means. But of course, they're also missing the xanthan. So a lot of people call them axanthic as well. That's just not the most common term for them. Let's see, I see a question. How many snakes have I lost from escapes? So, hold on. I'm trying to read everything. I do not want to breed my own rodents. But yeah, if you want to do that, you could. Let's see. You put a video of your snake up 2 days ago on Facebook and feeding it pinkies. Guess it depends on how big it is. If it's this big, you don't want to be feeding it pinkies. You want to be feeding it like whole quail or like small rats. Well, maybe not small rats, fuzzy rats. But how many snakes have I lost from escape? I guess, like, if we're talking about snakes that I've lost and never found again, not too many. So over the course of about 13 years, there was one time when I was cleaning out enclosures and I put like 4 snakes all in one like little thing while I was cleaning enclosures, and then they all got out of that little thing, and we lost one of them that day. I've lost probably, I want to say, half a dozen baby snakes like that over the course of the last 13 years. Maybe just figure about one a year. But I haven't lost any for a few years. It's kind of been, in the last like 5 years, I've really been able to like refine everything and not lose any like that. I did lose one baby, I want to say last year or the year before, that we never found. But, you know, just figure one a year. That's pretty much where we're at. And of course, I've had hundreds. So one a year, that's probably like 0.03%. You know, other question was, what are the different kinds of red factor? So that is a genetics question, and it's probably going to go over some people's heads. So I'll just quickly mention red factor. So red factor adds reds and pinks into the snake. So if this girl was red factor, which she's not, but if she was, she would have a light powder pink color in this background gray, it would have like an undertone of pink. Um, so that's what that does, and it does that with any morph. Pretty much, maybe not caramel. Caramel's kind of a weird one, but I'm not going to get into that. So different types of red factor, officially two, but more likely there's at least two other ones that haven't been isolated. So cherry is a type of red factor that has been isolated and kept separate from all the other red factors. And then everything else we just call coral. So there's coral snow, coral ghost. And a lot of people, if they're not talking about cherry specifically, will just say red factor. And what they mean when they say red factor is something in the coral complex, is what we call it. And we think that there is possibly 3 or 4 different mutations in the coral complex, but there's probably only one that's like really common in the US. There were some lines over in the UK, 2 other lines that started in the UK, but they aren't very prevalent in the US, and I don't even think that they're super prevalent in the UK anymore. Those were kind of more popular. One of them was called Champagne. I can't remember what all of them were called, but one of them was like in the Champagne line. And those just like, they just didn't take hold here. So pretty much, if you're just red factor adds pinks and reds, if you're not talking about cherry, you're talking about coral, and people are just going to call it coral because nothing else has been isolated. So it's either cherry or coral, and they're both under the like a red factor umbrella. A red factor mutation is just a dominant gene mutation that adds pinks and reds. That's it. So yeah, hope that wasn't too confusing for anyone.
I've got 2 red corns, and that really helped me. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of red. There's a lot of different reds.
Mm-hmm. He's saying that Bob doesn't know anything about escaped snakes because I had a black African house snake escape. It's been over 6 months, maybe longer, but I've never found it. So I think it's probably still alive and drinks out of the tanks. And I usually have field mice come in throughout the winter, and I haven't had but one. So
okay, so maybe. All right, well, Splinter is acting like she doesn't really want to be held much anymore, but does anyone else have any comments or questions about Annery since she's out?
Beautiful snake.
Okay, I want you to remember what she looks like because I'm going to go into a small genetics lesson with you now.
Uh-oh. Pam, there's going to be a test.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Whips. Hey, Trash Cat.
Okay. Oh, come here, girl. All right. This is JoJo. She is about 1.5 years old. She's not like the chillest snake, but she is an ultramel. And that means that she's a combination of amelanistic and ultra. And most of the time, amelanistic completely removes the melanin, which is the dark area. But because of its relationship with the ultra gene mutation, it kind of fuses together instead of one like completely taking something away. So there she is. Maybe. My camera so badly wants to focus on my face. I can't. I don't know. It's not going to focus. But you can kind of see her color at least.
Yeah, she's really bright. She looks very bright.
And there's her belly. And I don't know if you can tell from the... Nope. I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but she doesn't have any true blacks on her. There she goes. All of her dark colors are more of a gray. So she is a type of hypomelanistic. And if you know anything about medical terminology, you know hypo versus hyper. Hypo being less than usual, hyper being an excess of. And melanin, of course, is the dark pigment. So a hypomelanistic is going to have a little less melanin than usual. And that's what she is. She has the very similar colors to like a normal. but her blacks are dulled into a gray instead. So that's hypomelanistic. And the reason that I wanted to show her to you is so I could show you this other boy, who is, I hope, a little more easygoing.
Did she tag you, Sarah?
What?
Did she tag you on the wrist?
Did she? I don't think she did.
Okay.
All right.
You didn't act like she did, but I thought she did.
This is Merlin. Now you'll notice Merlin is gray. Merlin is a combination of what JoJo is, the girl I just had out, and the girl before that, Splinter, the big girl, the big gray girl. Well, black and white girl. So the anerythristic removes the reds, and you can see he does have a little bit of yellow. And then that hypomelanistic also reduces the blacks. And so you get that gray. And yes, I am on Morph Market. Sarah's Snake Shop on Morph Market. Oh, he's angry. But yeah, so he is what we call an ultramel anery, which is a type of ghost. So you might see a ghost. If you see the term ghost, that's usually going to be hypomelanistic type A. There's multiple different types of hypo also. But that's usually going to be hypomelanistic type A plus anerythristic type A. This guy happens to be ultramel plus anerythristic type A. So he's a little bit different, but you can kind of at least get the gist. See if I can focus here on his colors. My camera is not super good at this. There we go.
Beautiful.
You can kind of see he's got a lot of pastels in there. And he also has those blue eyes.
I do have that snake, by the way. An ultramel.
Which one?
The ultramel.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Ultramel is my favorite mutation. If anybody ever asks, Ultramel is my favorite. And of course, I like some other Ultramel mixes. Like I like Gold Dust and stuff. But Ultramel is hands down my favorite thing to work with. And I think they're beautiful and they vary so much. This guy's a year old this year. So he's actually more like 10 months right now. And you can see he's still a little squirmy. So like they kind of get out of their squirmy phase when they're a little bit older than this. Same with JoJo, the girl I just had out, the Ultramel. She was also a little squirmy. She's still a little bit older than him, but not by much. So this is their squirmy phase, their sort of rebellious teenage phase of like, no, you will not hold me still. Good luck. I'm trying to make sure that I am reading the chat also. What are the strangest places you found an escape? Oh God, there's one that comes to mind that I will never ever forget. There's two actually. There's two that come to mind. So one of them, first one that came to my mind was a normal that I had, who I don't even know how I got him. That was kind of in the time when I was taking in a lot of snakes that people didn't want anymore, and so I kind of ended up being halfway a rescue, and now I don't really do that anymore because it was just too much. But I got this normal male, and he was very sweet, but he was an escape artist, and he could get out of just about anything. And he got out, and I was like, okay, Carl's gone again. So we're looking for Carl, can't find him anywhere. And we'd almost given up, really. Like we had looked, and it was at this point I was living in a small apartment with a roommate, and it was like either he got out of the apartment or he's like, who knows? I don't know. So we're going about our daily life after we had looked forever. And my roommate's doing laundry and pulls all the laundry out of the dryer, clean, dry laundry out of the dryer. And there's Carl in the dryer. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Went through the dryer. Went through the dryer. And I don't recommend putting your snakes through the dryer. But he was fine. I was like, how are you alive, dude? I had no idea. But that's probably the weirdest place that I've found a snake, except we had a buttercorn snake named Bob. I always name my snakes Carl and Bob. Don't ask me. But we had a buttercorn snake named Bob, and he was cross-eyed. And he was always like, his eyes never left being cross-eyed. And again, another escape artist. He could get out of anything, but it wasn't very bright. And so once a week he would get out, but he thought that if his head was hidden, his whole body was hidden. And so one time I found him with just his head, like in one of the drawers of like my necklace drawers of like I have my earrings, necklaces, jewelry drawers. He just stuck his head in it, and his whole body was just laying out on my dresser. And the next time, another time he got out, he stuck his head between two books, and then the rest of his body was just like laying on the floor next to the bookshelf. And it was that way every time. And we finally did get Bob a nice, secure home. And he actually went to a new home shortly after that, because he was another one that I had taken in from somewhere. So yeah, those are some fun stories. Usually it's pretty they're pretty easy to find. They're gonna hide under stuff, but they don't want it to be too hard to get under because they're kind of lazy usually, unless they're babies. A lot of times adults don't really want to go too far from their enclosures because their enclosures smell like them. So if they're really well established in their enclosure, there's a good chance you're going to find them near their enclosure. Corn snakes tend to go down, not up. So if you lose a snake, like one time, here's another fun story. One time I was moving, and one of my hatchlings, he was probably this guy's size at that point, so almost a yearling, had gotten out, and I was desperately looking for this snake because we were moving, and I obviously didn't want to just leave a snake there, and I finally just gave up. I was like, I have to get out. I can't just stay here. And assumed, of course, that he had gotten out, like who knows where. And I get him back home, I get back home to the new house, and I'm cleaning out all the adults' enclosures, and he had crawled into the air hole of one of the adults' enclosures and was just hanging out in there with one of the adults. So he was small enough that he crawled into the air hole. And I was so relieved, though. I was so relieved that I found him, because I was like, I do not want to get a call from this apartment complex saying that there's a snake. But yeah, that's I hope that answered your question.
I lost an iguana one time, and I mean, we tore the house apart, and we could not find my son's iguana. It was gone. It was about, at the time, probably 1.5 feet, 2 feet long. Okay. Could not find it. It was Christmas time. And I took down the Christmas tree, and then I always bring in a big bag and cut the branches off the tree instead of dragging the tree outside so I don't get needles all the way across the whole house.
It's probably a good idea.
So I was cutting off branches, and here's this great big long green tail hanging down from where the branches. I was like,
you just never know.
I think I just found your iguana, Tucker.
Yep. You never know what they're going to get into. I have more snakes if anyone would like different colors.
Oh, I want to see them all.
Okay. We got more.
What a nice collection.
I like variety. All right, so this is Sneaky Jr. He is an A melanistic, and if you've learned anything from today's lesson, melanin is the dark pigment, and A in front of a word means there isn't any. So A melanism means he has all the colors except for his melanin. So he has the reds and the oranges and the yellows, but no blacks. Where he had black, it is now white. Or he never had black.
Belly looks like. Okay, so he's got a really, really light checkerboard pattern there with no dark on it. Okay.
Yep. So still checkers, but there's just no black now. They're kind of, oops, I'm going the wrong way. So they're white here, but they're orangey yellow up here. And he is also a red factor, so he does have that extra red in him. It's hard to tell on ones that are already red if they're more red than usual. But if you saw his sister, she only has the reds in here. I'm going to turn it the wrong way. So these are the saddle blotches. They're kind of shaped like saddles. Her red is only in here. where she has just a really, really light orangey yellow in the background, and his background is much more red than hers. I would have gotten her out, but she's gravid right now, and more gravid than any of these girls over here, and I just didn't want her to be too uncomfortable, so we're sticking with the brother for right now. But you can see his eyes are super, super red too.
Yeah.
He's
Awesome.
he's about 2 years old, almost 3. So just to kind of give you an idea of the size and age. And he's also not the best at being handled. He came from kind of a neglect situation. And so he was not used to being handled. But he's in really good health now. He has doubled his weight since he's been with me, and that's been about a year. He was super skinny when I first got him. So he might actually be a little bit older than we think, but as far as size wise, this is typical for a 2-year-old, 2 to 2.5-year-old.
So when will he stop growing? When do they reach full growth?
Usually I figure about a foot a year for 3 to 5 years. So right now he's probably not quite 3 feet. And so since he did have sort of a stunted like midlife, he may only grow another whole foot over the rest of his life. But if everything was normal, he would probably gain about another foot over the next year or two and eventually be as big as you saw Cleo in the very beginning, and Splinter, the big black and white snake. That's probably about as big as any of them would get. But like I said, since he came from a neglect situation, he may not get much bigger. You would describe the color as rust, huh? Okay. It might look that way on the camera. Try to get his colors close up.
I'm seeing
Maybe.
the deep orange and
There
the
we
light
go.
orange.
Yeah, you can definitely see that difference there. And some yellows on the side. And I mean, he's a sweet snake. He just isn't, he's not one for being handled too much just because of where he came from. And that's always something to think about too. If you're looking to get a pet snake, there's nothing wrong with getting an adult snake or a snake that's 2 years old or a year and a half or even 4 or 5 years old, but you kind of want to make sure that they've come from a place that they're used to being handled, especially if you just want a really good pet. And that's why I always handle my babies, because I want them to be good pets for the people that eventually get them. And so he was just one that was never really held, never really messed with, so he's not easy to handle. He's not difficult. I mean, you can see he's not like biting me or being mean or anything, but he just is so uncomfortable being handled. Thank you, Paul. I think he's awesome looking too. He just can't seem to get comfortable. Uncomfortable snake.
Somebody had a technical question. Why don't you take the camera, or would it be easier to take the camera to the snakes?
No. This is a spare bedroom, and that is sort of this is what the public gets to see.
Gotcha.
And everything that's over there is probably not something people want to see anyway. So
Gotcha.
It's Candy, a corn snake for Halloween. Okay. I don't know if I missed a part of that conversation, but
No.
No.
She's just talking about the rust color, I think. Probably.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I am bad at deduction, so my bad. So there's Snakey Jr. And the reason he's named Snakey Jr. is because his dad's name was Snakey, apparently. So we went with Snakey Jr. Let's see. Be sire, what? To grab those ruby slippers. Okay. So I don't know what's happening. I think that chat just generally has its own little thing happening. And
somebody said that somebody had to get off because the tornadoes headed their way. And literally, we do have tornadoes. So he said, "See you later." So
be safe.
Yeah.
Be safe. Let's see. I have one more color of snake for you, but then a few others just to sort of show the difference in how snakes look as they grow up. So let me get the one other morph for you, and then we can move on to other things if we want to.
Awesome. Pam, she's going to give you an essay question for putting that ruby slipper comment in there on the quiz.
So this is glowstone. She is not, we don't 100% know exactly what morph she is. But if you're ever looking for a snake that has no reds and retains the yellows, I don't know if you can see, she has no red, but she has a lot of her xanthan yellow still.
Wow.
I wish I could get my camera to like actually go up close. She does have the checkerboarding. There it goes. And you can see she has no red, only the yellows. So if you're looking for a darker colored snake, but you don't want those reds, you can get a caramel. And that's what she is. She's technically an anerythristic type, meaning she has no reds, but not the same as our typical anery type A. It's very weird. Corn snake morphs get complicated, but you can pretty much get a corn snake in any color. If you add her with like an amelanistic, you just get a bright white and yellow snake, which is called a butter.
Oh, I've seen those. Those are pretty.
Yeah, I kind of like them. So, and she might actually be a golden instead of a caramel, but that is yet to be known. I have raised a lot of caramels. She looks more like a golden than a caramel to me, but it's just going to be, we're just going to have to wait for breeding trials on that. Golden is probably the rarest corn snake morph in the world right now. So, really hoping that we actually have some.
They're a little pricey too, I believe.
I don't think any of them have actually been sold.
Okay.
Like, maybe, I mean, not for decades, if any. Travis Whistler might have some for sale. I ended up, Golden has a very interesting history. It's like, I think that the morph itself is over 20 years old, but we only have like maybe a handful of known visuals in the world. Because there's just been such bad luck with them. Either they don't have very good fertility, or the babies die in the egg before they hatch, or the babies die shortly after hatching, or the adults don't make it through hibernation very well. I mean, there's just been issue after issue after issue. And we're just trying to get healthy snakes that have this mutation, if that is possible. And she very well could be one of them. And I'm hoping that she is. I have her and her brother. And they both, he likes to eat quail. He'll only eat quail. He's slightly smaller than her because it took me a long time to figure out that he would only eat quail. And it started out with, I had to cut like quail thighs off for him to eat, and then quail heads. And now he can eat like the baby, tiny, itty bitty, newly hatched quail, finally. But she'll eat anything, so I'm really excited about her to see what she is.
That may be where I saw one for sale, because I did follow some of the people you mentioned before, some of the breeders. So he might have.
Oh, yeah?
one for sale. I don't know.
There's also a gold dust corn snake, which is different than a golden corn snake. So gold dust is a combination of ultramel and caramel, and they look pretty similar, just not exactly the same. And then golden, I don't know if Travis would be selling any goldens. It's possible, I guess. I don't really keep up with what Travis does, so I don't know for sure. I do know that he ended up, so originally it was Karsten Zoldi who had the project. He caught the original female. And then eventually it got to Joe Pierce, and he had the project for a long, long time and only produced a few visuals still in that time. And then he had to downsize, and so he sent a bunch of possible goldens to my friend Laura at Wind Serpents, and then she had to downsize, so then she sent them to me, and then I had to downsize, and then I sent them to Don Soderberg, who actually ended up giving them to Travis Whistler. And so that's how Travis ended up with goldens in his collection. But along the way, of course, I kept a pair that I believed were capable of producing goldens. And so that's where she came from. However, Carmel is also in the line because my possible hets from Joe were from a het golden to a caramel to test and see if golden and caramel were the same or if they were different mutations that just looked the same. Turns out they are different mutations that look the same. So we don't know for sure if this girl is golden or caramel, or she could even be a combination of both golden and caramel.
That's exciting.
I know, it's so much. It's so much. But I love her. Her name's Glowstone and her brother's name is Goldstone. They're named after Minecraft blocks because I
Oh.
decided to name everything in this project after Minecraft stuff.
Nice.
I don't even know. So it happened because someone who bought a sibling a few years ago named the sibling Beetroot. And I just took that and ran with it. I was like, we got a Beetroot, we got Ingot, we got Wither, Shulk, we have Hoglin, Piglin, Goldstone, Glowstone, Nether. There's so many. We have Ghast, we have Slime. They're all named after stuff in Minecraft right now.
That's cool names. Yeah.
So that's her. I don't know if we have time for anything else or if anybody has any specific questions.
We've been going right at an hour. It's pretty much up to you because we chose an odd time to start on the half hour so that if we wanted to go over, we could. So
Okay.
it's up to you. I don't want to take advantage of you, but
I'm not worried about it. I like talking about snakes. So
Why don't we
the
go
only
on?
Okay. The only other thing I really wanted to do was sort of show what a normal corn snake looks like in like every stage of life so that anybody who is like, I want a normal corn snake, but the babies that I see online aren't, the color that I expected them to be, can kind of get an idea of why that is. So let me put her back and swap out here.
BJ was a scout leader. See, when you read the chat, you can find out all kinds of interesting things. But were you in Florida, BJ? Was that useful info?
So here is a baby normal. And he's actually a few months old, but you can see he's not nearly as colorful as some of the adults. He's got some yellows coming in, but they're still brown. They hatch out just like brown and white. So you can kind of see he will color up, but for right now, he's mostly just brown and white. He's got some reds coming in because he's about 6 months old now. He's one of the ones that I have available on my website. So if anybody's looking for babies, I got him and a bunch of his siblings up for sale right now. Focus.
He's really pretty though, even though he's not as colorful as the bigger one. He's still really pretty.
Yeah, he's awful cute. I kind of like him. I like all of them. That's the problem. If it was up to me, I would just keep them all because they're so cute. But I can't do that. So that's baby. Go ahead. What was your question?
Well, I kind of bit my tongue, but I'll ask it. You can say I'd rather not say.
Okay.
It's kind of like a human hippo kind of thing. Is that the sibling to our friend that got a snake from you recently?
Which?
Jenny?
I can't remember.
She got a normal.
If
the female.
Yeah. So yes, that would be that's a sibling. Yep. So this is a yearling, 1 year old. You can see she's a lot more colorful and a little bit bigger. This is actually the sister of Goldstone that I mentioned. This is Redstone because she's got more red on her. But just so you can kind of see the color progression as they get older. I love her to death. She's so cute. She's so cute. I think they're all cute.
Normals are so pretty.
I agree. I think I have more normals than any other morph in my collection.
I think I told you I had 6 or 7, and they were all morphs. And I thought, wow, these normals. I saw one day somewhere, and I'm like, that's a normal, and I got it.
Yeah. All right, this is 2 years old. You can see most of her color has come in. Gorgeous. This is Zathura. I can't get it to focus, but can see her. She's still a little bit brown, but again, they're not all going to be exactly the same as far as saturation. Like they come from different lines. This is actually the granddaughter of my very first corn snake. So I'm keeping her and a few of her siblings, and she's actually small for her age, in my opinion. But some of her older siblings are breeding this year because I always want to keep my first corn snakes line going. So um, and most of them are named after him. His name was Flair. Her sister's name is Rosefire for a similar reason. And we kind of keep the whole clutch with like a sort of fire theme to it. So there she is. And I think that's pretty much all I've got. I mean, you've seen Cleo, you've seen Bjorn, so you know what 3 and 4 year olds look like as well, as far as color
Yep.
saturation. And at this age, which is about 2 years old, pretty much all the colors that they're going to get have come in. They may not be quite as bright as they will be when they are fully grown, but you can definitely see at this age that, oh yeah, these are the colors that this snake is going to have for sure. And thank you, everyone who says she's beautiful. I agree.
She is
I hold this
Now,
line very close to my heart because my first corn snake, he passed away, I want to say a year and a half ago. No, it was almost exactly 2 years ago that he passed away, and this was like one of the last clutches that he fathered. So yeah, it was a little heartbreaking. He was old though. I had him since before I graduated high school, and so he lived a long, happy life, and he got some ladies knocked up before he went. So that's good for me.
on his legacy, yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to say that snake is a more, I'm the student that you want to throw your hands up like I gave the lecture, and then I get this.
No,
I get
I love the
question.
questions. That's why I'm here.
Would you, what, if you had to say that snake is a specific pattern or more, what would you call it?
So she's not a
No.
good example, but because she is genetically actually a mask, but she's really low expression. One of her parents was a super mask. I'm not going to get into that too much because she looks close enough to a normal that I put her here.
Right.
But let's just say, like her specifically, if without the mask mutation, you could call her just a classic or a Carolina. With a normal pattern. She doesn't have a pattern mutation. A lot of people will just call them wild type because there's no like, it's not like she's an Okatee, which is like Okatee Hunt Club. She's not a Miami, which, Miami, Florida. She's not a Florida Keys. She's not an Alabama. So she is just a nondescript wild type corn snake. Except for the fact that she isn't, but that's too complicated right now. She looks like a normal, okay? I know what she is genetically because I know what her parents were, but she's so low expression that the average person's not going to be able to tell that she's a mask.
Jenny Lynn, you missed your baby's brother a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I can get him back out.
Well,
He's right over here.
I was thinking that looked like an Okatee, so I need to do my homework some more.
Well, you're not wrong necessarily. Okay, so you're wrong, but Okatees are a type of normal. So if you're looking at the color, you're looking at the pattern. The biggest difference is her black like borders are really, really thin. They're only about half a scale thick in the thickest place, and in some places they don't exist at all. So I can maybe try to zoom in.
Yeah.
Maybe. So you can see her blacks, like let me see if I can, like over here. Sorry, girl. Like there, it's only about half a scale thick, and that's about as thick as it gets on her. With an Okatee, it's hard to put a number on it because, as they say, Okatee is in the eye of the beholder. But most of the time, you want the thickest part of those borders to be at least one whole scale thick. Now, that can be 2 half scales next to each other. It doesn't have to just be like one scale. Like it can be 2 half scales. But like when you get into like the extreme oketees, you're looking at maybe even 2 scales thick in some places. So let me get Bjorn back out as a comparison because she is an oketee. So that way you can kind of see a little bit better what I'm talking about here. I don't know where she came from. Oh, I left her enclosure over here. I'm like, where did I put your thing? She's not very happy right now. Here, let me swap.
I'm watching on my cell phone and I'm blind anyway, so that's probably why.
All right. She is not wanting to go back in this enclosure. She's like, no, thank you. I choose freedom. You don't have choices in this house. Okay, so here's Bjorn. So you can probably see on her dark areas are at least, let's see. Yeah, so her dark areas are at least 1 whole scale thick.
Yeah.
Like if you look at that, you can see that 1 entire scale is black, and then sometimes it's 2 half scales, and in some places, especially by her tail, it's more like 2 scales. That's what we're looking for in an oketee, is how thick that is. I don't like to put an exact number like, oh, it's 1 scale, it's 2 scales, because oketee kind of is in the eye of the beholder. But the person who refined oketees was Kathy Love, and she said that the main things that she looked for were the thick borders and large blotches and just nice coloring. So and that has kind of been reduced down now, the like requirements for what makes an oketee, aside from the fact that they originate in the oketee hunt club. We have okay, I will answer the question, how many different pets do I have? Are you talking about different pets, like different kinds of pets, or just like how many animals? Because those are very, very different answers. I will watch the chat, and when you specify exactly what number you want, I will answer you. But so what the like requirements for an oketee now have pretty much just been thick borders. Even though the original requirement was like, the large blotches and the sort of saturated coloring, as well as those thick borders, the borders are kind of the only requirement at this point. Let's see, Bob. Will Sarah show the Halo in short description if there's time? I would have to go get Halo from the other room, which would take a minute or 2. So I'm gonna leave that up to the host if he wants to wait on that.
That's fine if you want to fool with it. Again, I don't want to keep you too long. I'll sit here forever.
I'm fine. This was my plan for the evening. When you're like, hey, podcast, I was like, heck yeah, podcast, snakes, let's go. Okay, so let me answer. Is it Stefan or Steven? I will answer your question. So as far as how many different species I have, 4 different species of animals overall, sort of 4.5. So I have guppies. Nope. Well, if you're including all the different species in my fish tank, I have 2 different species in my fish tank. I have cory cats and I have guppies. So that is my fish tank. And I have 2 different species of snakes right now. I have corn snakes. I have my desert king snake. And when I say that I have like a half of a species, I have a house cat who was just like a random house cat, but I also have a Savannah cat, and he is half African. Well, he's part African serval. He's not half. So he's a hybrid. So he's like half of another species, kind of like just sort of, you know what I mean. But generally speaking, so that's 2 in the fish tank, 2 in the snake, and 1.5 as far as my furry 4-leggeds go. So kind of 5-ish. But as far as like individual animals go, we discussed last week that I have 76 snakes. And that number hasn't changed too much. I have sold a few those last week, but even if we just say 75, plus about that many fish in the fish tank. So that's about 150. Then my 2 cats. So just figure about 150 living things in my house, other than myself and my husband.
Wow.
Which is interesting to think about, that I am caring for 150 other lives.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. I will quickly run and get a Halo. If you guys can entertain while I'm gone. I'm gonna take this headset off because you guys don't need to be hearing what I'm doing in there. Actually, my mic's here. Doesn't matter. Whatever. I'll be right back.
She doesn't want to hear what we're going to be doing. I hope she goes back and hears that. I'll have to tell her. She's great. I hope everybody's enjoying this as much as I am. She's just awesome. Of course, I have corn snakes, so it's very interesting. Who's raising that hail, Sam? Is that Star?
The little tiny yipes, yeah.
Yeah. Yazzie decided to run cats about 5 minutes ago, but it was short-lived. I'm actually going to go look at one of her snakes as soon as we finish that she was talking about before we went live. And it sounds like something I would like to collect, a corn snake. We shall see, because I need more.
I know you don't have any, so you better get some more.
Right. And I've got to treat my cinnamon stripe ball python, not boa, for mites. Got 2 on
I'm
it.
back. So, this is Nectarine, the Halo Snow. Let me get him zoomed in. He's kind of in shed right now, so his colors are not as bright as usual. But you can see he's got the pink with the yellow outline. You can definitely see the pink right there. And it is outlined with yellow. It's hard to see because he is in shed. You can kind of see the yellow in the belly checkers a little bit better. Kind of.
Yep.
He already smells the girls, so you know that just is what it is. Give me just 1 second to get a paper towel, sir. Excuse you. He's excited. Sorry about that. We're gonna just turn that to the side. Do not try to mate with me, please. So, what was the question? So there was a question. Okay, a halo and a short description. So this is the halo snow corn snake. So snow is a combination of amelanistic and anerythristic type A. So you saw the amelanistic, no melanin, all red. The anerythristic, no erythrin, which is all gray, black and white. So when you take away all the black and you take away all the red, you're left with white and yellow, which is what he is. And most of his yellow would typically also be gone if he was a regular snow, except for the carotenoid yellow that they get through food along the neck. But since he's a halo, he has those yellow borders. Halo is an incomplete dominant mutation. The homozygous version, meaning if he had it on both sides of his DNA, basically, there would be no pink in the middle. It would just all be completely yellow in the middle. But because he only has it on one side of his DNA, he doesn't get the complete yellow blotch, the yellow blotches. He only gets the outside sort of halo look. I actually produced the very first halo corn snake in my collection in my very first clutch, which was between a regular amelanistic and a caramel motley that carried the amelanistic and anerythristic mutations. And his name was Prince. And there were 2 snows, Prince and Popper, I named them. And Prince was the nice one who ate really well for me, and Popper was kind of a jerk who was kind of a picky feeder. So once I got Popper established, I sold him, but I was really good friends with the people that I sold him to. And once in a while, they would come pick up rodents from me. And so one time they brought Popper back to just like show him to me, like, hey, here, look how he's doing. And Popper was just white and pink with no yellow hardly at all, where Prince had these bright yellow borders. And so I knew that I had something different. So I asked the community, like, hey, what's going on here? This guy's a lot different from his sibling. And Don Soderberg told me, like, hey, those pop up once in a while. Nobody's really had the patience to figure it out. So maybe that's a project that you can do. And I took that to heart, and I took it and ran with it. And I spent 12 years actually doing test breedings on halos. and determined it to be incomplete dominant mutation, and now it's accepted by the hobby, which is really exciting for me. Steve Roy Lance was the one who came up with the name Halo, and I sold him a pair of Halos a while back, but he's out of the hobby now. And I have no idea what happened to those snakes. Unfortunately, if I had known, I probably would have, tried to see if I could get them back, but didn't work out.
What?
But yeah, so now we have the progeny of my Halo corn snake. Unfortunately, and this is another problem that corn snakes can get cancer. So Nectarine's grandpa, which was the snake that I hatched in my very first clutch, which Prince, ended up getting cancerous tumors that were inoperable, and he passed away from that a few years ago as well, which was really, really rough, but I was really happy that I was able to get some babies from him.
Is that because of the lack of melanin, like white cats get it on their ears, like if they sit in the window?
The tumors, you mean?
Yeah, because if you sit in the sun a lot, white animals.
Yeah.
And
so I don't think so. I actually keep my amelanistics in a sort of semi-clear, like semi-opaque containers, so that some of that UVB gets filtered out. Because there has been evidence that cataracts can form. I haven't heard of any like tumors being caused in snakes by UVB specifically. So I don't know what exactly caused it. It started out as just a little tiny bump right by his like man parts. And I thought, because it was breeding season, I thought that maybe he had just damaged a peen. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give it like a week and see if the swelling goes down. And it kind of came and went at first, but then it came back and it didn't go away. And so then I took him to the vet, and the vet thought that it was just a cyst. And so they drained it, but some of the stuff that was coming out was like solid, like it seemed like bone. And they said, well, that's concerning, but not so concerning that we're going to do anything else about it right now. And so then a couple months went by, and the bump got even bigger and started to get infected. So I took him back again. They drained it again, and it still seemed like there were chunks of bone coming out of it. And they gave me antibiotics to give him injections every day. And the antibiotics seemed to help with the like obvious infection, but the bump itself never went away. And then I started to see other little bumps showing up down his tail. And then I saw a few more little bumps showing up like above his tail. And so then I took him to the vet again, and they're like, oh yeah, he has cancer. He has specifically, I don't remember, it was some kind of bone cancer. And that's why like chunks of bone were showing up when they were emptying it out. And pretty much they just said like, keep him comfortable, but you're going to have to start thinking about a quality of life thing. And I told myself, like, if he gets to the point where he stops eating, then I'm going to put him down, because that is sort of the sign of like, they've given up on their own life. And he always did fine. He never acted like he was in pain. He would still let me hold him. You could tell it was a little tender if you kind of put pressure on it, on like the bumpy area, but he always was in good spirits. He would be fine if I was holding him. He ate every single week. And then one day he shed, and when he was in shed, he didn't eat, which was not unusual. But then even though he shed, he didn't eat for 3 weeks straight. And I said, if he doesn't eat next week, the 4th week, I'm going to take him to the vet and have him put down. And he passed away 2 days later. So he was ready to go. And he kind of knew, and it was really sad. I still kind of tear up thinking about it, because he was my little baby. He was the very first snake that I ever hatched and like kept, and I raised him from tiny little baby, from 2011 to I believe it was, let's see, he hatched in 2011, and I think it was 2018 when he passed away. So he didn't live super long. He got cancer pretty young. which is really sad. And so I keep an eye out. I haven't noticed anything in any of his offspring or his siblings. I think it might have just been him. And I'm grateful that it was just him, but it's still something that can happen. And there was nothing that we could do. There was just nothing that could be done, you know. So yeah, don't want to end this on a sad story. Jen, I am glad that your new snake from me is doing well. Eve is a great name. Thank you for updating me. I always love updates. I do have the brother over here. Showed him off a little bit earlier because I have like 4 or 5 of those siblings left.
I was going to tease her because she said, "Oh yeah, I saw the brother. It was a hard choice." I was going to say, "Dang it, we were going to get to see it again." Thanks. That she has the brother.
I mean, I'm always happy. You know me. Listen. I got more snakes out today to show you guys than I have before. I think because I just, I love snakes. I love animals. I love all animals, but snakes, especially corn snakes, are just like my thing. I mean, he basically glows, and he's not near as nice as his dad was or his grandpa. I'll have to look back at my records. I can't remember if he's a son or a grandson. I feel like he's a grandson because I know that he's a grandson. So his mom was the daughter of Prince, and then he came from Prince's daughter to a random unrelated male that I used for testing, and testing to see if it was incomplete dominant, which it was. So yeah, there we are.
I have to, since we're talking about kind of sad things, I have a big fish that I'm going to euthanize tonight. I've been putting it off. I should have done it a couple of days ago. It's a big gold Severum I've had for years and years. But it's
poor little thing. It's time, huh?
Yep.
It is sad. It's sad because you know it's gonna happen, but you're never prepared for it. I'm gonna probably have to say goodbye to my old kitty cat soon, my Savannah, because he's 14, I think, this year, and he doesn't have any teeth, and his hips are bad, and he can only eat soft food, and he's can't really jump or run around or do anything anymore, and he kind of just sleeps all day, and it's like I know that the time is coming, but I'm not ready for it.
Yeah. Well, as long as he still has some quality of life, as long as he's not in pain and all that. So.
Yeah.
Always, thank you so much. You're an awesome guest.
Yeah.
Second that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm always enjoy coming on and talking about snakes. And if anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to ask. It can be literally about any snake things. I don't,
Mike,
whatever.
Do you have any questions? I'm teasing Mike. In the panel.
Do you bromate your snakes?
Brumate them?
Yeah.
Yes, most of them. So I have a few that are wild caught from Florida, and you don't really want to brumate those. They don't brumate very well. They don't like getting cold. It's not really in their blood to get cold, especially the wild caught. But otherwise, yes, I brumate. A minimum of 6 weeks in the winter, but sometimes a little bit longer than that. I had some of my bigger snakes that I knew I didn't want to breed early in the season. They brumated for 12 weeks. But that's usually the longest I'll brumate for is 12 weeks. And then 6 weeks is the shortest. So I kind of had some of the smaller ones like him would brumate for 6 weeks. Middle-sized ones would brumate for 8 weeks, and then the bigger ones that would brumate for 12 weeks, just because I feel like that's a reasonable amount that they can handle. I don't want to brumate little tiny babies for 12 whole weeks because, I don't know. To me, it just seems like it's probably not a good idea. It may not be the worst idea, but I don't want to risk it.
That's a good question.
Do snakes give you energy when handling other animals? An excitement feeling? Kind of. I would say for me, it's a very calming thing because especially when the snake is calm, he's pretty calm. He's mobile, but he's calm. And it makes you focus. It makes me focus. So I'm one of those people that I live in my head way too much. I spend so much time just like thinking and like introspection and just, but like I drive myself crazy. So anything that gets me to be in the moment in my physical body, focusing on what I'm doing physically. So whether it's painting or handling snakes, whatever, it's very like good mentally stimulating thing for me. And it may not be so much for other people. Like, there's some people who don't spend enough time in their head. They need that time to introspect. Like if you're spending more time playing video games or watching TV than you are just like in your daily life, then you probably do need more introspection. But I spend way too much time in my own head. And so having anything that's like out here physically that I can touch and see and sometimes smell when they poop, and like work with and handle, it mentally is just very good for me personally. If that answers your question, I'm not sure. Plus, I learn a lot.
It's interesting, kind of related to that, to see people react when they first hold a snake.
Yeah.
My great
They
nephew,
always think it's going to be slimy.
yeah, my great nephew held the snake that I ended up buying, a ball python, a couple of weeks ago, and he was surprised at it. And when it reached out to him, looked at him and came up close, I said, "She's just looking to see if you have something for her, and just taking a look at you. She won't bite you," and she didn't, thank goodness. So
Yeah. Thank you. Was it Pipi Kaka? I don't know how to say your name, but I do try to be good at explaining things. Like I would say of anything, I'm good at knowing where someone is in their like in their knowledge of things and sort of trying to meet them where they are. So I appreciate that because I really do try to do that.
why they're not slimy.
No, not slimy. Everybody always thinks they are because they're shiny. Like, well, he's a bad example because he's white and he gets washed out. But everybody looks at him and they're like, "Oh, they're shiny, therefore they're slimy." They're not. If they're slimy, it's because they've been in their water bowl or they pooped on themselves or something. But they're actually very dry and corn snakes are not very rough. They're actually pretty smooth. You can just barely kind of feel the bumps of the scales. But there are other types of snakes that have what we call chelations to their scales, which means there's a little tiny ridge that pops up in the middle of the scale. It's called a keel, and so it can kind of make that snake feel actually kind of rough, a little bit like Velcro. Um, Corn snakes aren't that way. Rarely corn snakes will get keels in their scales, but not very common. So if anything, they're the opposite of slimy. They're going to be either really smooth or really like kind of rough because of the keels on their scales. Do my cats get along with the snakes? No. For my Savannah cat, snake is his favorite snack. So I have to be very, very careful that there's multiple doors between that cat and my snakes at all times because my cat has also figured out how to open a door. And there's been a couple times when a snake got out and I found it with its head chewed off. I say a couple times, that happened one time, and that was really sad. So yeah, so that's going to be a no. And one time I had kind of one of my big adult males slipped his way out of the enclosure, and my other cat, my regular house cat, he just wanted to alert me to what was going on. He was just meow, 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 and he's not normally a crier. He'll meow maybe if he's hungry, but this was not a time of the day when he would normally be hungry. And he even then, like, he doesn't meow like that, but he was like scratching at my door and as soon as I opened the door, he ran right to where the snake was and was like, "It's right here. Look at it. It's right here." And I was like, "Okay, I found him. Thank you. Thank you." So I would say we have kind of a dog-like response from my one cat and a very cat-like response from my other cat. Let's see. Can you get snakes angry without harming them? I like when snakes are angry. I feel like it would be more exciting than a calm one, and I wouldn't mind being bitten because I'm used to the pain. Well, so technically you can do it without physically harming them, but I don't recommend it. It might be a little psychologically damaging for them. And it's not so much an anger, like they don't really have enough of a brain to have those like emotions. It's just a fear response. And so if they are biting at you, it's just because they're afraid of you and you're just causing them PTSD. That's pretty much all that is. It's not an anger. It's just a fear. And so, I mean, I don't ever personally want my animals to fear me. So like I don't go out of my way to make them want to bite or anything. And that's not something I would recommend. But like you can kind of just like wave things in front of their face to make them like kind of have a striking response. But again, I don't recommend that. You're just going to give your snake PTSD, and that's really not fair to the animal. If you're going to go out of your way to psychologically damage them, you might not want to have that animal. That may not be the animal for you. Not trying to be rude about it. I just, well-being of all animals, mentally and physically.
I have a video that I was maybe a live stream when I first got my first snake. I don't know, 4 years ago, I guess now, and he was a little ball python, but he had some adjustment here, and anyway, he was striking, and I wasn't experienced enough and didn't realize that it was a defensive strike. And I urged it, and pushed it. I had a mouse, I mean, I wasn't touching him, but he wanted me to leave him alone. And even Patrick that comes in here, forget his other name, but anyway, he was saying Dragon Lair. He was saying that's a defensive strike, I think, Bob, instead of saying, you idiot, leave him alone. So I look at that video now and I think, wow, I've learned a little bit since then. So
yeah, it's mostly just fear. They don't have. So to answer one question in the comments, yes, they do have personalities. So I was I was observing these snakes. They're all in their own individual enclosures lined up over there. They're just like little carrying cases. And Cleo, which is the female that I had out at the beginning of both of these streams, she was curled up and just sitting and waiting. Very little curiosity, which is very interesting to me because she was the one who was wild caught as a baby. But she's always just very chill. She doesn't cause any trouble. She doesn't really move that fast very often. If she does, it's probably on accident. When she eats, she's very dainty. She doesn't want to strike at it. She wants you to put it down and walk away and just let her have her thing. She only wants to eat one thing at a time. Don't try to give her multiple food items. She'll only eat one. And so that's her. She's just a very, very, very easygoing snake. But then there's snakes that are very, very curious and they want to move around all the time and they want to see everything that's going on and they want to, and like they'll come up and they'll be watching you when you're walking by or, and they'll just be moving around all the time. And then there's some that are always going to be nervous. They have nervous personalities. I have one male that I cannot handle, period, end of story, because he is very, very aggressively nervous. So I've had snakes before that were nervous, but they would kind of just sort of shell up when they got nervous and just but this snake is very like, his fight or flight goes straight to fight. Like he's very not, he's just not a good snake to have as a pet. And then you get ones, like I said, that like, they're just fun. They're just fun snakes. Like, and you can tell when they're babies, what kind of personalities they're going to have. And sometimes you can tell within the first few months if they're going to make a good pet or not. I do everything I can to handle all of my babies so that they will make good pets, but some of them will never grow out of that nervous personality. They just have an anxious personality. So yeah, if that answers the question, yeah, they all do have their own little personalities. And I can usually tell, I can usually tell, like I know my animals well enough to know everything that is going on with them, if that makes sense. So I know when a certain one is going to eat and when they really don't want to eat. I know that I have a certain female that will not breed unless I'm not in the room. There's, it's like, I can just tell, like, I just know my animals well enough to know all of these little tiny nuances about each one of them, just like you would about a cat or dog, It's like, oh yeah, this dog likes to, will go out and pee anytime, but this dog won't go out and pee if it's snowing outside. Or, this cat will only use this litter box in the corner, or this cat will only eat soft food, or you know what I mean? Like, or this cat doesn't like, turkey food. They'll only eat chicken food. Like, you learn these things about your animals. Like, I know some animals that will, like some of my snakes that'll only eat quail. And some of them that are going to be a lot easier to move over to reptilings versus not. Like, they all are different. And that's another reason, in my opinion, to get a good breeder who can be like, hey, this snake likes this but hates this, and you can handle them this long or whatever. Like, so that they know they're snakes, basically, is what I'm saying.
When I put myself back on the camera because Worm is Chihuahua pug.
Yeah.
When you said some don't want to go out and pee, she looked at me so sad. We're having a rough time. Where she lived
Aw.
before, she had a doggy door, and we don't hear. So
Oh.
she's working on it.
She's like, I have needs, Dad.
Yep. She called you out. Any last questions?
I will say, if you like hissy snakes, could get yourself a beauty snake of some kind, because beauty snakes are very hissy snakes. They're big. They're about 2 to 3 times the size of your average corn snake. Which I love them. I love beauty snakes, especially Chinese beauty snakes. But I've had some beauty snakes, and they tend to be a little bit more hissy. They're not like mean usually, but they just and they're also like gopher snakes can be hissy. But like, again, I wouldn't go out of my way to get an animal that is just going to be afraid of you.
I think what he might be talking about, he or she might be talking about, is we see the people that have the tree boas and the green, whatever they are, that ball up on a limb, and they're
the green. Let's see. Yeah, green tree pythons and emerald tree boas.
Yeah, and they're pretty much a display, a centerpiece kind of thing. They're not an animal that you handle. However, somebody has, at least one person has a juvenile that he's working with, and he lets it strike him. So I don't know. I just don't know anything about them to really answer to that. But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be good for the snake to make it strike. That's why I feel bad about that time I was trying to feed, and the snake was trying to make me leave it alone. I didn't know what was going on.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know, what they need or want. This guy smells the females on me and has been twitching. I don't know if you guys have seen him, but that's the breeding dance. Twitch, 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 twitch.
Well, I'm glad you said that. All of mine, whatever I have, 7 or 8 now, they're all small and juvenile, but they all twitch right after they eat, right after they feed. They all go around twitching and twitching and twitching. And
so does Bob. I've noticed that about Bob before too.
I've been twitching a long time, but mine's not.
It's kind of scary. I usually run when I see him twitching.
That's right.
It's like, oh man, got to get away from that.
Yeah.
There are multiple different kinds of twitching. There's twitching because they're annoyed and they just want you out of their space, which is probably what's happening, like if it's right after you feed them. But like with him, I just handled females. He's a male. This is breeding season. He's twitching because of that. Like, and that's what the male and female will do with each other, is they'll twitch. And that's kind of like, if they're both kind of doing that, then that's sort of a sign to each other that, yeah, I'm here and I'm ready to roll,
Oh, maybe they don't enjoy eating together, even though it doesn't seem bad. I mean, I keep them separated, with my tongs and stuff, but maybe they don't enjoy that.
Generally speaking, I would say probably they don't enjoy that too much, because at that point it's like, you're in the space where I have my food and I don't want you to get my food, even though they may have just eaten their food. corn snakes generally will eat in the wild like more than one food item at a time because they'll come across a nest of birds or a nest of rodents, a mother mouse that has a bunch of her babies there. And so just because they are used to just eating one meal item with us, it's kind of more in their nature to like be on the lookout for other meal items. And if there's another snake there, that is might be kind of the signal of like, hey, this is where I'm eating, please go away.
Well, I do feed them more than one, whatever size they're eating. Everybody gets 2, 3, even one snake gets 4 large pinkies, but whatever they want to eat, they pretty much get.
Yeah. Sounds like they're spoiled to me.
No, they're my babies.
Exactly.
What do you think about taking? This is the last question I'll ask you. I'll try
Okay.
to make it. What do you think about taking them out then to feed them? There's been a school of thought for a long time with ball pythons, for sure, that you should remove them to a separate container so that they learn not to, but also use hook training, to tap
Mhm.
them and the difference. But I feel like it's just an unneeded stress to remove them to another place to feed them. They know the difference when I'm coming to feed them. First of all, I always pour a little bit of water, on one of the plants or something in there so they smell it, so they know it's supper time. So they
Yeah.
know. But if I just open it up and pick one up, they don't try to bite me. They know I don't have any food.
I would say that is those are probably going to be for the people who don't handle their snakes very much. Because if you only handle your snake when you're feeding them, the snake's going to think anytime you have your hand in there, it's dinner time. So that's often when snakes become, food aggressive or cage aggressive, because they're not being handled outside of feeding time enough. Because they don't know the difference between you and food anymore because there is no other time
Oh, goodness
that you're
sakes,
handling
what
them.
is the matter?
So I would say like if you don't feel the need to, don't. I typically don't. And I have been bitten a couple times by some snakes that I'll be honest, I don't handle very much because they don't like me. They would probably bite me anyway.
Right.
Like
Right.
that one really aggressive male that I was mentioning. So it wouldn't surprise me if he became cage aggressive because he was never handled as a baby. I got him as an adult. He was already mean. He's probably not going to change now, no matter what I do. But I don't know. I hope that answered your question. I don't know if there's more. Have I ever
It
had a
did.
snake eat another one? I have not. No. Well, I have, but on purpose because I have a king snake and I'm a snake breeder. And sometimes baby snakes are born with deformities, and I feel like the circle of life is the best way to handle that. So the king snake gets a meal that day. But as far as on accident, no, I've never had a snake eat another snake. Uh, I have seen it happen, but again, that's going to be pretty uncommon. It's either going to be if you're housing like hatchlings together. It can happen if you are feeding together, which might be another reason to not feed them together. If you walk away for 2 minutes, one of them could be, trying to eat the food that the other one has, but is also like eating the other snake. That can happen. Um, it's probably really uncommon. I've seen some cases where, or heard of, I guess I've never seen personally, cases where someone is like the snakes again are pretty neglected, and then like they're basically starved, and if they're put in a container with another snake, they feel like they don't have another choice. That's the only thing to eat. That's the only thing they've had around them that could be eaten for a long time. Like I saw a picture, and it goes around once in a while of a ball python that ate another ball python, like at a reptile show, and that's one of the rarest things I've ever seen happen. Like I've never actually seen it happen, but the only time that I feel like it would really happen is if the snakes were literally starving.
Right.
So
I,
unless you're
I
talking about a
saw
king
I
snake or
saw
a
a
king
snake
cobra,
eating
probably won't.
another snake at the zoo in Texas one time, but
On purpose.
I don't remember what kinds they were. But yeah, there was two snakes in the enclosure, and they were both pretty good sized, about the same size. But one of them had the other one about 3/4 of the way eaten.
Oof. I hope that it was on purpose. King snakes can eat even like venomous snakes. So a lot of times, like king snakes are your best friend if you live where rattlesnakes are.
Yeah.
If you have wild king snakes around, they
Or
they are.
bull snakes. Yeah. Yeah. Bull snakes.
I
Are good.
I didn't know that bull snakes ate other snakes. You could be
Yeah,
right for sure. I don't know.
they'll eat rattlesnakes. Bull snakes will eat rattlesnakes right up.
That's crazy.
Are bull snakes king snakes, or are they?
They're a different species.
Rat
A
snakes.
different. Don't think that they are
Either. Okay. There's some
They're
beautiful bull
similar to
snakes.
both. They're colubrids, but I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. So they are in the Pituphis genus. Corn snakes and rat snakes are in the Pantherophis, I think. So, and then I think king snakes are also not in that Pituphis. Let's see. I'm trying to skim, but I can't find the information when skimming. Okay, yeah. So king snakes are in they're Lampreltis. Anyway, so they're all in different genuses. Rat snakes are in one type of one genus. King snakes are in a genus, and then the bull snakes and all those are in a different genus. Yet my brain has decided now it's gonna stop working.
Well, we've had you on here a while, but we appreciate it for sure.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Any time.
All right. If that's everything everybody has on their mind, we'll conclude this and let poor Star get away from Pam before she kills
I
you.
don't know what the heck she's doing.
Thank you so
She
much.
has to have the attention. Thank you guys for having me on. It was awesome.
It was awesome having you. I loved it. Thanks everybody on the panel, and thanks everybody for the questions and comments. And Huawei, thank you for the awesome link sharing. That was incredible. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jenny.
Shameless plug. Sunday night we have our Tennessee Fish Mafia, and everybody here except Sarah is on that panel. And we have a guest. I'm not going to say who it is, but he was in the chat tonight, and I haven't seen him on any live streams, so I'm kind of excited. He might have been, but I'm not going to say who it is. Just watch for the post, for the link. Good night, everybody. Yep.
Night, guys.
Night.